Greetings from the Dark Continent. Conscious Caracal here, and I'm back after a little bit of a hiatus. I actually was on holiday in Mpumalanga. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm here as always, from the Dark Continent to shine some light on the goings on down south. And today I'm talking to someone that actually has a bit of a history with the Stream of Consciousness show. He was my first guest on the first episode of Stream of Consciousness, the guy that basically set everything in motion, Nick Monroe, an investigative journalist from the US. And I'm going to hand the mic over to him so he can give you just a little bit of an intro to who he is and why you should care.
Well, my story is very wild and compelling when it comes to the whole... I'm like an internet explorer sort of person, and I just go wherever the waves take me. And when I was here last time, my friends Brittany Pettibone and Martin Sellner were detained in the UK. So the politics surrounding all that was mostly my focus, and kind of, complaining and, airing out my grievances. That's kind of what I do all day. I kind of air out my grievances, and I couple that with giving people a sense of what's going on in the internet sphere, just all around. I focus mostly on politics these days, but, I came from video games and the whole video games journalism scene, so I got that going on. And somehow I found my way here. And here is in the middle of the no man's land, where I was ousted from Twitter because I was ban evading for 3.5 years. Apparently, you can't get a new start, you can't start over, and me, I was just ousted without any chance of forgiveness. And I went through all the proper channels to appeal. I went through all the necessary hoops to jump to make my case. None of that matters. None of it. And so I'm just kind of making the best of what I got. And, I'm hanging out in the alt tech sphere, the Gabs, the Parlors, the Minds, the Telegrams, and BitChutes. And I'm totally not on Twitter. And I'm totally not News Shoot. So just don't follow them. But anyway, it's a very psychological experience, because, it's very lonely out there in the alt tech no man's land. You kind of are given what you got in terms of survivors from the Twitter banning. The people who followed me had to come find me, and they kind of banded together, and I'm very, very thankful for all their support in making sure I got through that turbulent time, of course. And really, it's kind of a journey in its own, kind of a new chapter of having to start over and all that. But it's showing me that I'm stronger than I thought I was. I'm able to make do with a situation that's pretty shitty, and I'm on the rebound. I was pretty depressed. I did an interview with Lucy Brown where I was just kind of bummed the frick out, and I had to cope with that. And thankfully, I didn't, spiral down into a black hole of depression that was impossible to get out of. But I was close. I was definitely close. But thankfully, I have friends I can count on and people in my life that care about me, who are able to guide me through those times. And so that is what I'm here to talk about. This is kind of like a therapy session for me, and just kind of, decompressing from all that. So I'm glad to be here.
Right. Well, welcome back, Nick. I think it's almost been a year, more than a year, since the first episode when you were here. And one of the reasons why I invited you back is the fact that I don't think a lot of people really understand or can really relate to the fact that of having like an account with, I don't know how many followers you had when you were banned.
Almost 50,000.
Going from a 50,000 account and then being just all that effort and all that progress just being wiped, like Thanos snapped out of reality. And I wanted to pick your brain a bit in terms of that, the idea of how did it affect your life? I mean, you said it really impacted you psychologically.
Yep.
But was there a point where you felt like you wanted not to come back, where you're like, just screw this, I tried, I'm not going to claw back all that progress that I just lost?
I was tempted to just hang up the towel and leave forever. Excuse me. Okay, yeah, I was tempted to just hang up the towel forever, but I know, like, at the end of the day, the bond that I have with the public is irreversible when it comes to them counting on me to do something, just anything in terms of getting news out there and getting, the current events of the day and the situations that pop up to people's attention. And that is what I'm good at. Will Chamberlain said I mastered the Twitter medium, and I consider that one of the highest compliments possible. And on the other end of it, my friends Brittany Pettibone and Martin Sellner are currently being hunted down by the Austrian state for God knows. I mean, it's complicated, but it involves words that if I say on YouTube, they'll probably demonetize this video. So I'm just going to avoid them. Anyway, they're being targeted. So I wanted to make sure I was there for them and whatever happens. So I have that going on. But really, what I learned is it's just a battle of wills. It's a battle of willpower between me and Twitter. I got to be stubborn, and I'm stubborn, and I'm going to out stubborn Twitter and the other platforms when it comes to my ability to just be there. And that in itself is a form of protest. And I've really learned the value of just being there at all and doing what I do anyway, in spite of circumstances, as a form of protest. They call it civil disobedience. And
Right. So yeah, on that note, in terms of you being pretty much exiled from the one of the big mainstream social media sites, just in your experience, do you think there's a bright future for alt tech? Now, just for a quick definition for the people watching that don't know what alt tech is. Alt tech is basically the new generation of social media. For example, Minds, Gab, BitChute. BitChute being a replacement for YouTube, Mind being a replacement for Facebook, and Gab being a replacement for Twitter. Now that I've got that out of the way, do you see a bright future for alternative media? And can you give us maybe a prediction of where do you think this is heading?
Well, yeah, it does have a future in terms, like, you have to contrast that with the current environment of big tech. Like, there's an ecosystem of censorship now with Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, whereas that necessitates a need for these alt tech platforms. And the experiences vary between the different sites. Like, Gab did an entire overhaul of their site, and while it does guarantee their longevity for like ever, and there's also a bunch of problems that arise within, such as their layout is just atrocious now, so much that I can't make my usual threads on there. And I consider that a problem that I hope Andrew Torba addresses. And I've heard similar complaints concerning the actual UI still being a bit of a mess, which is really a bummer because I was crossing my fingers that Torba would not, screw up that part. Because when it came to the threads system that they had before, it was nice and organized, very similar to what Minds had set up. So it was easy for me to double up, make something on Gab, transfer it to Minds, and have it in both places. And so Torba is like a wild card. He was one of the first sites that really came out in the alt tech space, but he's very isolationist when it comes to who he's willing to work with, and it's very hard to gauge his stances on things. Whereas his Minds is very much still on its own, but it's willing to cooperate. It's willing to negotiate in terms of accessibility and user friendliness, and the cryptocurrency system that they have up on the site is a godsend. So on Minds, you have these attention tokens or whatever, kind of like what Brave does, the Brave browser. But on Minds, you can use these tokens that they give you over time as rewards for being active on the site, and you can use that to boost the visibility of your posts, and it's brilliant. I exploit the heck out of this system when it comes to mines, when it comes to using these tokens. Like, I'm almost at 3,000 mines subscribers, and considering the size of the user base and all that, it's very good. Like, it makes a solid impression. Like, I'm optimistic on that alone when it comes to mines. And so you got those two things going on, but Parlor is really Gab's main competition. Like, I don't want to get into it too much, but Gab really hates Parlor, like, big time. And there is some sort of friction going on between, those two sites that I still don't understand, and a rivalry of some kind. But what Parler was able to do is capture the political sphere's attention more optimistically. Like, it doesn't have the same baggage that Gab is going on. And I'm really interested in how that kind of feud is going to play out in the months to come, because it's going to come to a head eventually. And I hope that they come to some sort of cooperation, but that's me being the optimist, diplomatic sort. Like, I'm unsure of what's going to happen, but Parler is able to, in the meantime, capture the public eye and attention in a way that Gab hasn't been able to do in a very, very long time. Like, Gab has kind of put itself into a corner when it comes to that. And so we got those sites, and BitChute's doing its own thing, and I love them. I love them. I love BitChute. And BitChute set up this YouTube one-click solution where if you have a YouTube channel, you just click a button, and all your stuff goes over to BitChute. Like, easy peasy. You can back all your stuff up, and if you have a YouTube channel of any kind, of any size, I recommend doing that, like, today. Do it now. You can come back to the stream later. We'll still be here. But BitChute has really taken an innovative approach when it comes to their torrent, like, the torrenting system they have set up for connected to their video hosting and all that, file sharing. I don't know the technical terms for all that, but they're very good and secure when it comes to the future. And when it comes to big tech regulation, it's going to be a toss-up about how that whole situation about free speech on big tech platforms is addressed when it comes to how the alt tech sphere is going to pan out.
But yeah, I really like that feature on BitChute where if I upload something on my YouTube channel, it immediately is just copied onto BitChute. It saves me so much time and hassle. The BitChute channel basically runs itself. And I would definitely recommend anyone else, if any other YouTubers are listening. I know Ronaldo Ghost is listening, another South African YouTuber with 50,000 subscribers. I would definitely recommend any other South African YouTubers or YouTubers in general that are listening right now to go create a BitChute account. It really is the simplest thing in the world. There are no downsides really. The only, like, the benefits are just enormous in terms of, firstly, I think Styx Hexenhammer made a very good point. I mean, he's the third. He was one of the big champions of just promoting these types of alt tech, and he was the most subscribed channel on BitChute for a long time, and he's now the third most. And he made a good point where he said, since his videos started being demonetized, but increasingly demonetized and de-promoted or hidden by YouTube, his subscriber count is pretty much stalled. But he says that his BitChute account keeps growing at a monumental pace, and that from what he's seen and from the numbers that he's crunched, he's actually gaining more new subscribers to his YouTube channel that come from his BitChute channel than
Really?
getting new subscribers just on the YouTube platform. So anyone that is considering creating a BitChute channel, if you want to promote your channel, I mean, according to Styx, you actually get a nice boost from there as well, seeing as a lot of people are moving over there now. And I think it's just good to diversify. It's good to have a backup plan. I mean, if the nice thing about BitChute, with it backing up all your videos, if for some arbitrary reason one day your channel is just unpersoned and removed on YouTube, at least all those videos will still be backed up somewhere, and people will know where to find you. So yeah, I think it's a very logical thing to do. I would encourage anyone to do it. So yeah, definitely go check out BitChute. I saw someone in the chat say that they didn't know that it even existed. So I'm glad I could bring that to your attention.
Yeah,
Now,
when you
yeah,
talk about backup plans, that is what I sucked at. I just assumed the Twitter ship would just keep on sailing, and they wouldn't, come after me. Nope. It can happen. If it can happen to me, it'll happen to everyone else, and it is still happening to everyone else. Lindsay Shepard dared to call out a transgender person as a male, and bada bing, bada boom, her account was permanently suspended on Twitter. And that comes with its whole, own host of problems when you talk about that situation. Like, somehow the person that Lindsay Shepard was arguing with, and this person started the argument, they provoked the situation in the first place. This person has connections to Twitter and can just get any account removed, on a whim. They did it before. I
and
think
maybe just for context for people listening, Lindsay Shepard was a student. She got her notoriety from recording a disciplinary hearing or something, or where she was called into the lecturer's office where they say, I can't remember what it was. I think she
she's in
quoted Jordan
Canada. She's in
Peterson.
Canada.
Yeah, and she quoted Jordan Peterson in one of her presentations or something, and they actually called her in to lecture about it. And she was on, I think, Joe Rogan, or she was on Ruben Reports. I can't remember, but one of those shows.
Yeah, I bet
And
she
I
did.
mean,
I bet she did the whole
she's not
circuit.
even a right winger. She's on the left. She's pretty much, she calls herself, I think, a classical liberal. She says she's pretty firmly on the left. So it's not like she is this extremist person that was just worthy of being removed from social media.
Yeah, basically, what I come to understand is whatever your worst fears are about the future of social media, at least in my case, they're all coming true. Like, just, I've stopped writing them off as, foolish fantasies that can never come to pass, and just started looking towards them as, an omen of things to come, possibly and probably, because
Mm.
that's what keeps happening. And right now, with Facebook and its Libra currency, there's the concern of being deplatformed from money too. And the Facebook rep in front of a committee hearing today in the United States gave contradictory answers about what happens when it comes to political neutrality and using Facebook's cryptocurrency system, this Libra. And his earlier answer said, "Oh, the Libra Council has the power, or it's up to them to decide who gets to use it and who doesn't." And later he said, "Oh, the Libra Council doesn't have that power, so nobody knows, because Facebook is one of the most untrustworthy platforms around," and that was a fact that was acknowledged in front of these committee members, today. So the world is a clown world. The clown world meme is real, and welcome to the wild ride. That's all I know.
Well, I can assure you, we're all strapped into this roller coaster, so you're not alone. Seeing as you earlier said that someone described you as a pretty much mastering the platform of Twitter, I'd like to get your insight in terms of where do you think the site is going? Do you think it's sustainable? Do you think it's just too big to fail? Or do you think Twitter actually has some very serious things that it needs to worry about on the horizon as a
Oh, I'm
platform?
glad I'm glad you asked, because that is something I thought about a lot these past few months. Yeah, it's been months. Shit. Yeah, the past few months really opened my eyes that it's not a big tech solution only, or an alt tech solution only. The solution is these two things are dependent on each other. You need the big tech platforms to have these conversations across the aisle. You need to have that back and forth of ideas and disagreements. And that's what keeps Twitter interesting. That's what keeps it alive. And the echo chamber effect of just being on, you know, the big tech or the alt tech alone is very, very scary when you realize the implications of it, about when it comes to the exchange of ideas and the peers that you can bounce ideas off of. Like if you have everyone agreeing with you, it becomes self-inflating in terms of sense of reality. If you depend on that alone, like you have to do that sort of outreach outside your comfort zone all the time, no matter what. And I'm sad that nobody has come to realize that yet, like on a practical scale. So that's what I'm trying to do now. And I'm trying to make any sort of deplatforming that anyone tries to do to me just nullified and a moot point. And I'm basically creating my own network of contacts outside of Twitter and these spaces to just bounce back every single time they come after me. So I'll make it like a why bother sort of matter. Like that's the thing that Milo and Loomer kind of failed to do, and Infowars is just kind of on its own anyway. So like they've allowed themselves to be contained in these spaces. Like they haven't taken the leap to try and branch out again. Beyond that, and well, I commend their enthusiasm for what they do. I mean, they keep a viable sort of audience and platform on their own right. I mean, Loomer has their own website, Milo's doing his own thing. So they got their own, foundation to work off of. But I don't think that's the solution. Did I answer your question or did I just ramble?
No, it actually, it answers my question. Actually, leads me into a thought that I'd actually like your thoughts on as well. And the thing that you mentioned there, it's something that I noticed, and I don't think maybe they know it or maybe they don't. I think Milo is a good example of someone that I can't remember how many followers when he was in his prime on Twitter before he was banned, and he said afterwards something along the lines of, no, this is only the beginning. This will only make him stronger. And my immediate thought, and it's still my opinion, is that no, I think it was for him as a brand or for him as a person to get banned off Twitter and not have another platform except his website basically was a death blow to an extent to his brand. I think it pretty much thrust him into a form of irrelevancy that he didn't know for a long time, and I think still to this day, I don't see anyone talking about him anymore. I think the last time I saw anyone mention him was when he talked to Jordan Peterson on his channel, and that's it. I do think you make a very good point in terms of they didn't have alt tech presences where they could keep connected with their following, and I think if they had that, if they fully embraced, for example, Gab or Minds, I think they would have been the blow would have been cushioned quite a lot, and those two alternative tech sites would have gotten a very big boost at the same time. But I think it's an opportunity wasted there, unfortunately.
I was in DC for this demand free speech event, and I got to meet I got to rub elbows with all the DC political influencers and all that. And Milo was there, and it was a teaching moment for me that Milo is definitely still in his prime when it comes to being able to do his thing. Like you just don't notice it anymore because he's gotten better at kind of keeping to himself and controlling the message he wants to get out. Like people still listen to him, and people are still look up to him, and he's still got a fan base that is notable and it's sizable. That's a given. And he was one of the, like, I saw his speech at the demand free speech rally event, and he still had his energy. He was dressed up as Lauren Loomer, and he still had his energy. He still had his mojo, as I like to call it. And I think you might be underestimating him when it comes to visibility, because he might not just be he might not be visible in the space that you're used to anymore, but he's still visible in other spaces, which leads me to believe that alt tech still has potential in that front. Like Milo still keeps the flame alive, and Milo is still capable of getting his message out in spite of everything that's happening to him. That has happened.
That's a good point. Actually, it's a bit of a a different perspective than I approached the topic from myself. Now, talking about DC, what are your thoughts on the social media summit of Trump? And before you answer, I'll just give a little bit of context for the people that don't know. So President Trump had a social media summit at the White House where he invited a bunch of social media commentators, YouTubers, alternative tech like Minds, and he invited them for a summit where they talked about online censorship, big tech bias, among other things. And it was a pretty high-profile event. A lot of the media or mainstream media lost their minds because not Twitter or Facebook representatives were invited. But I mean, those representatives get their say in the mainstream media almost every week, while these people that he invited were actually people that have been marginalized by the main social media sites. So I'd like to know what you thought about that whole event. Do you think it was a big success and impactful, or do you think it was a bit overblown?
It was definitely the right step forward when it comes to the dialogue that needs to be had, because people's optimism towards Trump definitely waned in the past 6 months to to a good part back in 2018 about Trump's ability to handle and address the situation. So people had different expectations, and while when it comes to ideas and brainstorming, sure, it could have been better on that front. But what it did succeed at was Trump being able to tell everyone, hey, I understand what's going on better than you realize. Like, you mentioned the Andy Ngo incident. Like, he knew about that, and he said that he's making a follow-up summit of sorts with the heads of these companies. And he said they have to come. Like, he's looking into regulation. He's looking into the solutions of what to do. And he's not just making it some sort of re-election promise that many feared he would. So, yeah, there's signs. There's good signs. And, of course, there's still room for improvement. But it was a step in the right direction for sure.
Well, that's the thing. I
And
think
the pushback from that was huge, because people said it was just a bunch of right-wing conspiracy theorists. But no, Tim Pool is there. Tim freaking Pool, who is basically, milquetoast, left of center sort of guy. And he was
some
thrown
Occupy Wall Street Pool.
Mm-hmm. And like it just showed how out of touch the far left MSM is. The CNNs and the Vices and the Hot
the
Posts.
founder of Minds, I can't remember his name. He's not a right winger, not from what I know. He's pretty much also a centrist.
Yeah, and the Parlor guy was there, and oh yeah, Gab had a hissy fit of some kind, and it didn't look good. Like, Gab could have been more diplomatic, and he made a statement. Torba made a statement saying he should have invited Loomer and a bunch of, like Milo and so forth. But I think he could have handled it better, is all I'm saying.
Well, I think it was definitely an interesting development. I found it very, very hilarious how the mainstream media basically framed it as this meeting of radicals. And I think one of the headlines even made this very, very strange implication, where they said, actually, this is not so, it's not so strange for the president of the United States in general to invite radical elements to the White House. And my first thought was, are you seriously comparing the inviting like Tim Pool to inviting, for example, some type of dictator? And
or inviting Richard Spencer onto CNN.
Oh yeah, for the people that don't know, CNN just interviewed Richard Spencer, I think, today regarding Trump's tweets that are apparently racist hysterics or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were talking off air before the show started about how the world's news and in South Africa as well, politics seems to be moving at the speed of light. Now, something as well, seeing as you are also very well acquainted with the social media sphere, do you think the popularization of social media, well, of course it has had an effect, but how big do you think has that effect been on the escalation of politics and polarization and the world, the clown world that we have today? How big do you think that effect's been?
Well, when it comes to this question, you have to go into it thinking of internet and the real world as two separate spheres, and that's kind of the background that people approach it from anyway. But what's going on now is a bit of a merging between these two when it comes to decisions made by companies, like the whole Nike backlash for one of their shoes, and calling Kaepernick or whatever his name is, saying this shoe's racist or whatever. I mean, you got that nonsense. But like when it comes to politics, I think the most recent example I can give is Alexandria Ocasio Cortez and uh, the squad, as it's called, making a big hissy fit out of Trump's tweets. Like they took an online situation from something from Twitter and made a big fuss about it to the point where Congress had to meet up and basically vote to condemn these tweets from Trump as racist or something.
Hmm.
So they were
And
able to clog up time. They were able to clog up real world time and attention for internet drama.
And I saw someone in the chat mention the main source being the fake outrage. And on that note, something that you brought up before the show started that I'd like to get more information on is Trump's main meme smith, Carpe Donktum, if I don't know how you pronounce his name, the guy
Carpe.
that's made like most of the videos that Trump tweets out, most of the memes. You said there's been a new development on his side as well, something pretty disturbing.
Oh yeah, there was the BuzzFeed tried to dox him and his family's real identities and so forth because of like coming off of the social media summit and all that. They decided to set their sights on Carpe. And so what basically happened was BuzzFeed backed down. And so it seemed like a victory until today when Huffington Post is apparently, according to Carpe, going to do what BuzzFeed did not. I'm just going to see if he tweeted anything recently, but that's what's going on now. And it really hits home the point that these sites all work together and cooperate on some sort of deeper level than expected from the public side. And they want to take him out because Carpe is effective at getting a message out. There's no Carpe for the left, that's for sure. And it makes him unique, and that in turn makes him a target.
Right.
And I know that feeling. I know that feeling.
But yeah, that's a very interesting point that you bring up. I mean, it's pretty much a cliche meme now, but that idea of the left can't meme. But at the same time, I think something that we do need to consider is the fact that I think they know that how memes work. I think they know that they don't just discredit it as something trivial. I think the problem seems to be the fact that if your whole ideology is based around avoiding offending people, you can't really make memes because memes are inherently have some type of either thing that makes someone uncomfortable or
memes
some
are right
type
wing.
of
Memes are right wing.
content in it.
Is,
I
is
think it
that
was
what you're
Jordan
saying?
Peterson. Yeah, Jordan Peterson said that you can't be funny if you can't be offensive. You need to be able to be offensive if you want to have any chance of being like a really genuinely funny comedian.
And I would agree with that. And I'm really, I'm really not surprised that Peterson said that, because that's kind of the approach he takes to all these political issues. But he's right. And they are the far left are the no fun allowed crowd. And it's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because there was a civil rights audit report. Like Facebook is having some sort of independent third party analyze the rules and their policies and what they can do to make them better, worse. But one of the things they recommended in the most recent report is getting rid of humor. There's a humor clause for hate speech, apparently, and this third-party group recommended that they close that clause and just not allow humor anymore. And if that happens, everything's going to go to hell, that's for sure.
I disagree. I think it will solve everything. I mean, we've finally there's that meme of like, we've done it, boys. We've solved racism. I think that's what will happen. I think the world will just be a perfect place if we remove all this damn humor. But yeah,
Breaking news.
Excuse me?
We're all breaking news. We're all screwed. We're just all screwed. Like, just give up. The world's not going to get better. It's just going to get worse until it just eventually breaks apart and we all have to start over.
Yeah, but something that I do appreciate, well, one of the big things that I appreciate about Trump is the fact that how he just has a talent for causing chaos and for causing people to absolutely just foam at the mouth and absolutely lose their mind. I always tell people that the Democrats really, let's say if they wanted to win in 2020, the most basic, very ground level one thing that they had to achieve was just not lose their minds and get unhinged. That was all they had to do just to get a very solid foundation for 2020. And they couldn't even achieve that. Like, just remain relatively sane. Don't appear like you've completely just lost the plot. And now, I mean, this week, what Trump did with AOC and that whole group of people, like you said, her little posse, I think what he did this week was absolutely a masterstroke, where he forced the neoliberals to kind of circle the wagons around the progressives, where he said, basically with those tweets that he made, and then they took the bait. They did exactly what he wanted them to do and more. I mean, Styx just made a video today about they had this motion or something in the House where they wanted to condemn his racist tweets, and not even the Democrats could unanimously support it or something like that. There was absolute chaos or something when they had to do that vote. So and the interesting thing is the exact same schism and like divide that we're seeing in the Democratic Party, you see in their counterpart in South Africa as well. The Democratic Alliance in South Africa, the second biggest party, the official opposition, as they like to call themselves, is pretty much a party modeled 90% on the democratic ideological framework.
I thought you guys were run by communists.
Yeah, they're not in charge. They are
okay.
20% of support. But yeah, so they are the sane ones in South Africa compared to like the other parties. But yeah, they are experiencing the exact same problems that the Democrats are experiencing. They also have especially now after the pretty much humiliating underperformance in this year's election. They are also experiencing a schism between their founding principles of like classical liberal, free market, property rights, whatever, now being challenged by people within the party that are pretty much more socialist, leftist identitarians, people that talk about blaming like white people for all South Africa's problems and all that jazz. So exactly what's happening to the Democrats in the US, precisely carbon copy is happening in South Africa to the party that's pretty much modeled on their party. So I find that very interesting.
Yeah, what's going on?
Crossing the ocean.
What's going on is Tim Pool basically pushed this idea over the past few months that the Democrats are going further and further to the left, and because they're doing that, it makes it seem that the people on the right are far right in comparison to their current position as the very, very far left. But in reality, when you look at it from the actual center of political values and so forth, the Republicans have consolidated their positions, and they've made a healthy sort of centrist growth on their positions in comparison to the liberals going further and further left. And so that's what's going on right now with them, and it's kind of a identity crisis, much more so on their end than anything. And I think Trump is going to play into that for 2020 for sure.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, what Trump's going to do is he's going to see that schism, and he's just going to take a wooden wedge and he's going to put it in there, and he's just going to hammer it with a mallet. I think that's what's going to happen. And yeah, I mean, in the end, what I think is going to happen, and I think this is necessary, is that the Democrats, if they lose 2020, I don't think it's certain. Anything can happen. I think if they lose 2020, they will be forced to do introspection. I think after 2016, they let themselves off the hook with like the whole orange man bad.
No, they're incapable. They're incapable of introspection. After 2016, they did this whole Antifa thing. Like that's where the start of Antifa really took off in the United States, was after 2016. Like all the big political influencers from the left got together and said, how can we stop Trump? And that was essentially the idea that came out, was, the whole resist, terminology really took off. And that's kind of what seeped into the left ecosystem of ideas and took over. So for 2020, they will just declare war. Like, that's it. I see that as more of the possibility than introspection.
No,
I'm sorry.
I think if they crash and burn, they can either completely
Someone
fade from reality as a party, or they're gonna have to adapt. So we'll see what happens.
someone shot up and tried to firebomb an ICE facility,
yeah,
immigration facility. Like, that's an attempt at a terror attack from the far left. Like,
I mean, and if I'm correct, I'm talking under correction. Some of the Democrats were like AOC were challenged on it, and they couldn't even condemn the terrorist.
yep, it's very, very worrying about what the not too distant future holds when it comes to that, because they're holding up this would-be terrorist as a hero, and they're trying to rally their far left anarchist brethren to take more drastic action, which is not good. I mean, I'm stating the obvious here. It's not good, but I had to say that because in these people's deluded minds, they think it is good.
Something that I actually wanted to talk to you about was, seeing as you are pretty much a neo-investigative journalist, as I like to call you, more of the new generation of internet investigative journalists.
Thanks.
Is there a specific story or stories that you covered or broke even that you are particularly proud of, just in your career or your story as an investigative journalist online?
Well, since we met last time, there was the cam girls cult. Basically, what happened was I got a tip about this cam girl named Lana Rain that was very popular, and she was being controlled by this person. I have to say person because they had like a sex change or something, named Terry Sanchez. And Terry Sanchez believed in the power of taking shrooms. And he got Lana and a bunch of other, people in his friend circle to come under the influence of shrooms as a way to evolve their mind or something. And the tweets from this dude slash chick slash whatever they want to be called were wild when it came to that. Like, they consider it leveling up, and he was on it was on level 5 or whatever, and only Sanchez could reach level 5. And
so did you break the story?
Oh no, it was an ongoing thing. So yeah, technically I did break it, but they weren't too happy afterwards. Sanchez threatened to cease and desist, and I had to get a lawyer to, basically run point for me. And there were other cam girls that tried to speak out against Sanchez, and Sanchez was able to basically hush these people up and make sure they didn't speak out. And I had to break through that culture of fear that Sanchez had cultivated in that community. And so it was definitely a change of pace, but I was very proud of it.
And something interesting about that is the fact that that story that you're so proud of is a very typical internet investigative journalism story. It's not a type of story that fits into the old paradigm of investigative journalism. It's pretty much smack dab.
Here's some news for you. I don't just do politics. I can do whatever the hell I want. I talk about movies sometimes, and I
investigating movies.
No, I just watch movies, and
Yeah, so I'm gonna give some attention to the chat because I've been neglecting them. I see here Vulpes, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Probably not. Says it's been a while. Yeah, it's definitely been, man. I think he's Flemish. And there's a question for you, Nick. Someone in the chat asks, "What do you think of James O'Keefe?"
When it comes to James O'Keefe, I'm lucky enough to benefit from their findings when it comes to what I normally talk about. But when it comes to the question about their methods, I don't know enough to have a solid answer because people question that a lot. And much of the skepticism, though, I'm able to look past because they think he's faking it. Like when it comes to some of his findings, or taking things out of context. And more often than not, the answer to that is no. Like what he finds is pretty much on the nose. But I don't know enough about Project Veritas as a business to make
Mm.
an informed opinion on it. But that is
Right.
my general impression. I hope
Mm.
that answers it.
No, yeah, I think that satisfyingly answers the question that I saw in the chat. But yeah, I just want to take this opportunity to again thanks for everyone that are still listening at the moment. Yeah, it's like I said, it's been a while since I did my last show, and also thanks to everyone that's left a like so far. I really appreciate it. Now, something else that I wanted to talk about that I think is also very pressing is, or just a hot topic at the moment, is the whole idea of where social media censorship is going. Do you think that in the build up to 2020, we're going to see some very big accounts, like accounts that are labeled wrongthink,
Oh yeah, that's
being
gonna keep
removed?
going. That's gonna keep
Hmm.
going, and it's not gonna stop. And it's never gonna stop because there's no stopping point implemented in this system. Like they never have a finish line in mind. They just have eradicate all racism, eradicate all hate, eradicate all harassment. Whereas that's something in human nature that everyone is capable of, which means we're all we're all on the chopping block potentially for being, banned and deplatformed. Everyone and anyone is capable of having their internet presence just ripped off the face of the public eye at any time. It can happen to anyone. I mean, they went after Lindsay Shepard for God's sake, and the only reason they did that is because of Twitter's misgendering policy, which is a politically charged rule
Hmm.
that should not be in place for a conversation that's still up for debate. It should be left up for debate, and that's very worrying considering you throw her in the basket of deplorables, as it used to be called, and the ever-encompassing definition of extremism is so diluted and watered down that when it comes to the actual bad people out there, bad from a common sense perspective about those that want to radicalize others into violence, it's harder to gauge what's what in the actual dangers out there. And the conversation has been funneled and rabbit holed to a point of no return when it comes to that. So yes, it's going to keep going, and it's going to keep going until the system goes full tilt. That is a guarantee.
So yeah, so you're putting your money on we're going to see some very controversial bannings very soon. Like in the build up to 2020, we're going to see some very big channels or very big users on Twitter lose all their progress and basically lose their voice.
Well, look at the Carlos Mazza situation. They were able to take Steven Crowder's library of YouTube content and compile it together into a series of clips that made it look like Crowder was a hateful person that attacked Carlos's sexuality and ethnicity on a personal level, rather than a series of level-headed critiques based on Carlos Mazza's arguments he presented, on this Vox uh, YouTube channel that he had going on. And YouTube took Carlos Mazza's outrage and they implemented that into a formal policy. There's now a, creator on creator harassment policy in YouTube where that is such, I mean, that's susceptible to anyone, regardless of political leanings, and is going to inevitably cause some kind of controversy sooner rather than later in terms of someone getting under the skin of another YouTuber and having that go through this system. And
Hmm.
so it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, well, that actually then it's just a hypothetical or a rhetorical question, but that raises the question of when will it be enough? where
Never.
people in mass actually say, but I'm talking about the pushback in terms of when will people say, okay, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like this, we can't go on like this. Because it seems like people are just normalizing it. People are just getting used to it, getting desensitized to their favorite content creators just not being there. It seems like the reaction is always they get very passionate and very activistic when their favorite content creator gets banned. After about a week, they die down and then they kind of forget about it and say, oh, well, that's the nature of the world.
You reminded me of a project I did a while back, but haven't updated. The Encyclopedia of Deplatforms spreadsheet or something like that. It was basically a tally of all these different channels and notable people that have been removed from various websites. And if you looked at it one after another, the slow incremental chipping off of the block, it started off with the, quote unquote fringe weirdos, but then it moved down and started getting into the moderates and the more level-headed and sensible people. And that's the nature of this beast that's been built. And that's something I always keep in mind when it comes to having these discussions, is looking past the incremental nature of it and not looking at it in isolation. Like, I focus on the history of situations and the context surrounding, like, where we got where we are. And it's really resonated with people in terms of keeping up their general concerns about things, and it really helps with awareness. And so that's something that's going to come to play in the future for sure.
Well, oh, your microphone is freaking out a bit. Little bit of a robot there.
No, you went robotic on me. You okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. I think it's maybe on your side.
No. Okay, you're crap.
Well, while we wait for Nick to.
Okay, hold on. I think you're good.
Okay, good. Awesome. Oh, I can hear you now again, man. That was just a little bit of a hiccup, it seems.
It really, we had a good conversation going, but now, like, my mind's blank.
Yeah, well, something that I also wanted to bring up before we start closing out is another thing that also is becoming more relevant is in the lead up to the 2020 election. Do you think that there's any hope for, like, for example, these big social media giants to be in any way regulated? Or rather, let me rephrase that question. Do you think that there's any way to get them back on the right track, or do you think they are pretty much on a one-way street towards just becoming complete echo chambers that are irredeemable? Or do you think, like, for example, Trump can do something to at least mitigate the effects of their censorship, or do you think it's a lost cause?
What happened there is, I'm going to use Facebook as the best example. Like, the outside consultation and the outside advisory people that Facebook has leaned on for directions are all leftists. These left-leaning think tanks and academic groups are not free speech aware. Like, they more care about right-wing extremism than anything else, and that's part of the problem and the uneven nature of these rules. Like, the whole you can't talk about white nationalism thing is a good example about rules that are starting to overextend their reach because of the CNN Richard Spencer thing going on. Technically, by Facebook's own rules, they have to deplatform and ban CNN for having Richard Spencer on. In the same vein,
they're guilty by association.
Yeah, in the same vein that they got rid of Paul Joseph Watson, and how they went after Sargon. I think he's listed as a hate figure or something, or associated with hate figures. And that's the rationale that they got rid of Milo and Loomer under. So that is the the pressing dilemma overhanging all of this. It's been a problem for years that the right wing has not had the same amount of visibility and presence in these academic think tank circles necessary to push back against the bias from these left wing groups. And that's where the heart of the problem is. And if you read through these boring reports and papers that they put out over the years about, these dialogues and conversations they have, that's the recurring theme. It's always tilted against the right wing, and that's how things have gotten where they are. So is it too late? I think it might be too late, like in terms of outreach. I think they've put too many chips in and too much skin into the game when it comes to who they're listening to exclusively. I don't think there's a chance for a rebalancing of the scales, so to speak. And maybe, I mean, but it's a very, very unlikely sort of scenario.
It's still, and I know it's actually quite something that's very possible, but it's very hard for me to imagine a site like Twitter or Facebook going the way of MySpace, even though it is entirely possible.
What's going to happen is parallel internets. Eventually, the infrastructure for the Gab, Parler, Minds, and BitChute is going to be developed enough to be self-sustaining and viable. And it's reaching that point thanks to what I talked about earlier, thanks to Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube deplatforming, folks, which will inevitably lead to the parallel internet outcome.
Well, I think we've actually had a very informative chat and a very nice guest to kind of end my hiatus of my show for, I think, the last 2 weeks. Or no, I think that my last show was during the South African election. I was pretty much I pumped out so many new episodes that I kind of got tired of the formats, and I'm reinvigorated. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on, Nick. It was a very interesting discussion. The people in the chat are literally starting to debate the origin of life on Earth. So I think that's a sign that we've
hold on. Hey, people in chat, I need you to go to my PayPal and give me money, because I support myself based on viewer donations, and please keep me going. Please donate $1, $2, whatever you can spare, and help keep me afloat, especially in these trying times. I'm a poor, deplatformed soul. I'm an internet hobo, and if you have any spare change for me, please throw it in my tin cup. Thank you.
But yeah, I was just about to get to that point. You can find all the links to where Nick Monroe still has a presence online in the description. And please do support his work. I think he is one of the few people that actually can call themselves an investigative journalist nowadays. And he has definitely really has done some very nice work in terms of, I think your big talent is putting information in one space or one place. A lot of the times with breaking stories or breaking news, it's all over the place. You have to go to different users, different pages. You kind of put it in the night, or used to on Twitter. Now there's this guy, Newsshoot, that seems to be doing it, where you put all the information that's necessary in one easy to digest thread. So I think, definitely something that people should check out. If you want to find a Nick Monroe substitute, there's some guy imitating him on Twitter, imitating his style, Newsshoot. But again, thank you for coming on, Nick, and thank you for everyone that tuned in. I will definitely, I've got a lot of new guests lined up now for in the coming weeks. So there should be an episode every week of Stream of Consciousness. And enjoy the rest of your night, guys. I know the majority of people listening are from South Africa, so you can definitely, I hope you have an awesome rest of your evening. And if you have any final thoughts, Nick.
That's my final thoughts. What's up?
All right.
I hope you have a lovely evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. It was a pleasure being here, and I thank you for having me on to vent about my woes.
Yeah, I hope this was a good therapy session. So cheers, guys. Have a good one.